at that depth of field.
Hello, everybody. Good morning, and welcome to OpenCV Weekly. I'm Dr. Satya Malik, CEO of OpenCV. Our guest this week is Alex Glow, who has the official title of hardware nerd at Hackster.io, a leading community for technology projects and DIY hardware hackers. And, it's great to have Alex on the show today because she's going to talk about a very important topic. How do we move to greener and more sustainable electrical engineering? Alex, welcome to the show. But before we go to your introduction, let me first introduce Phil Nelson, who is the Director of Content and Creative at OpenCV. If anything goes wrong with this show, it is Phil's responsibility.
That is
It's his
correct,
fault.
Satya. Thank you. Yes, again, it is I, the co-host with the co-most, the second banana, who is second to none, your plus one and only Phil Nelson, here to remind you of a few things we do every single week here on the show. The first of which is a giveaway to you in the audience. You'll be able to answer a trivia question later in the show on Zoom. You can get to Zoom by going to opencv.live if you're watching us elsewhere. At the time I ask the question, you will have the chance to answer and win the OpenCV course of your choosing. So stay tuned for that later. We're also taking Q&A from you in the audience wherever you're watching, but especially here on Zoom. Use that little Q&A button at the bottom of the screen to ask your question at any time during the show, and we will flow it into the conversation if we can, or we'll also save time at the end of the show for those questions we don't get to during our regular talking time here. Back to you, Satya.
Well, Alex, welcome to the show. It's all your show. Take it from here, first with an introduction, and then, we can go over what you have to talk about.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you, Satya. Thank you, Phil. It's great to be here. I'm so excited to talk about one of my favorite things in the world, which is just sustainability in electronics in general, obviously, and more specifically, green EE. So I figure that what we'll do is kind of run down the site. As it currently is, there's a lot of exciting updates that I'm hoping to push out later today. And also, I've got some fun physical stuff to show off here in my own studio.
Exciting. Will we get to see Archimedes today?
Oh, Archimedes is right there. I don't know if you can see him, but I've also got Fenrir, who is slightly more relevant to this
Yes.
discussion. He's not on right now. He's as usual, kind of in progress, but usually I try and program him to have a little script of something to say. Alas, not today, but maybe next time.
Don't be jealous out there, but I have met that robot in person.
Yes, this one is a lot more petable. He's very soft, and I hope that someday he gets to meet your virtual cat. This might be about as close as they get, meeting in virtual space.
I think so, yeah.
But yeah, so Green EE. Actually, I wanted to start off with a little bit of introductory stuff. First off, as you can see on this page, today is World Car Free Day, which seems very relevant. I first created greenie.com for a talk that I gave on Earth Day at Open Hardware Summit. And so the fact that today is World Car Freedom. Wait, is it 6 months later? No, it's 5 months later exactly. April 22nd is Earth Day. Today is September 22nd, World Car Free Day. It just feels very appropriate, and I'm happy to be here.
Absolutely.
Also, this month is September Sustainability Month on Hackster. So I am the video host and hardware nerd at Hackster.io, which is an online community of hardware developers, as Satya mentioned. And so this month, honestly, every month we're celebrating sustainability, but this month especially so. We've had a couple of other months around like wearable electronics. Next month is art. Very excited for that, especially with Halloween coming up. But this month we have a bunch of celebratory stuff planned and already in motion. You can share your projects on all these different pages. You've got upcycling, weather related projects, plants, all your plant watering systems and cute little things go there. Sustainability, obviously. There's a whole hub for that, full of delicious projects. It'll take a second to load here probably because my connection is wretched. And environmental sensing and animals and things like that. We want you to register for Impact Summit, which is next month on the 11th and 12th of October. Very exciting for us. This is the first time we're doing this, but we hope that it will become a tradition. We've got lots of cool speakers, panels, workshops, some giveaways, all kinds of cool stuff coming up for this, and it's completely virtual and completely free. So, and it's focused on preserving our air and water through cool hardware. So we got a ton of cool
Who's
speakers coming up for that.
who's the keynote speaker on that one?
Oh my gosh! I can't currently remember. It's been quite a week. But I think
Understood.
we've got some pretty cool people. I know that Sarah Maston from Project 15 is going to be joining us.
Excellent.
I think she's doing one of the keynotes, actually. There's two keynotes. And the other
We
one
should
I can't pin down in my brain right now. But yeah, a lot of
should
that stuff
talk
is going to
with.
be announced over the coming weeks, along with all these talks and panel
Mhm.
discussions and such like. I've personally invited a number of them. I'm going to be doing a couple of cafe sessions, which is part of my regular deal at Hackster. I'll talk about it in a second. And then also we'll be doing a Hangout and Nerd Out special session on sustainability, which is a joint show that we're doing now with Make, with my colleague Ginger Zhang and David Groom from Make. Very exciting.
I saw you. Didn't you just do the first one of those recently, right?
We
Like last
did!
week?
It was wearable tech, and it was glorious. We had
Sounds
Deborah
glorious.
Ansell, Geek Mom Projects, Kitty Young, who does art by physicist, fashion tech, and I think I invited the other person in my brain who's drawing a blank right now. Did I mention 1 hour of sleep? But it was an awesome
It's the
session.
morning for it. It's the morning for it.
Give me a
Welcome to
second.
the chaos stream, everybody.
Indeed. I am so abjectly apologetic to that person for forgetting who they are, but it's not you, it's me. Then there's also a bunch of cool, news articles and stuff that we're sharing about that. We've got contests going on. IoT Into the Wild, which is a collaboration with Seed Studio around their new Sense Cap prototyping kits. We've got a Smarter Sustainable World Challenge with Edge Impulse and Nordic Semiconductor, and this other one with NXP, the third Hover Games, which each year it's a UAV contest and themed something about sustainability. There's one about fighting forest fires. This year's is
Wow.
about land, sky, and food supply. And then there's Hackster Cafe. So this is my weekly deal. At the risk of giving you a fire hose, every Tuesday I talk to
Fire
somebody.
hose us up.
Absolutely, I'm trying to slow it down. I got the sage advice before we started that I should try and slow it down as much as possible and then slow it down a bit more, which is apparently a tip from wrestling. But
The late great not the late, the currently living somehow and still great Terry Funk.
don't curse
Thank
him,
you,
man.
Terry. Yeah. Oh, nothing can kill Terry Funk.
Okay, you're
Just
the one
trust
jinxing it.
me.
It's not on me. But so yeah, Hackster Cafe weekly show interviews with super cool people in technology, hardware specifically, and we've had a couple of especially sustainability themed ones recently, including
Hmm.
Crystal yesterday from Wild Grid Solar, who created the solar window solar charger. And also Kyle Wiens from iFixit, a personal kind of hero of mine. Does a
Yeah.
lot of right to repair stuff, not just teaching people to repair stuff, although they do have apparently over 80,000 guides for repairing your stuff, I think. They also sell cool
Jeez.
tools. I know, right? And they also advocate a lot for right to repair legislation. They're doing lots
Hmm.
of stuff in that realm as well. So that's really
Extremely
cool.
Oh,
important
that's
right
really
now.
nice.
Yeah.
Isn't
That's
it?
really nice. I mean, yeah, I mean, we have been using our stuff as if it is, you use and throw. There's no,
Disposable. Yeah.
yeah, there's no
Mm-hmm.
concept of repair in this country, which I was very surprised when I came here 22 years back. Um, and I mean, it's gotten much worse actually over the years.
Yeah.
Nothing is repairable now.
Yeah.
Yes.
No thanks to John Deere.
Aha! Yeah, we talked about that actually in the cafe with Kyle. He had just been to DEF CON and reported back about someone running Doom on the John Deere tractor, which is not the
Yep.
first time that they've been in the news for trying to keep farmers from repairing their own
Hmm.
tractors, which is, A, it's bad for the world, and B, it's bad for the little guy, not that necessarily
Yeah.
these people are little guys, but in a compared to
Compared
John
to John
Deere,
Deere.
like who's got,
Yeah.
you know,
Right.
you should be able to own your things, and part of that is being able to take
Hmm.
them apart, repair them, even hack them. Obviously, like of course I
Yeah.
believe that, and they just make it. I've fixed my digital camera over here with a guide from iFixit years ago,
Hmm.
and just it's a wonderful place to
I,
learn
I
stuff, and I
used
really
it to
admire
do
what
my
they do.
first ever MacBook hard drive swap. Was an iFixit guide. So thanks iFixit.
Nice. You'll if you watch the interview, you'll also learn a fun little anecdote about me swapping out RAM for them on stage once at a conference.
Slick.
But so now we get to the fun part because everything else was
Mhm.
super boring. uh,
So far,
where we
yeah.
go and talk about green EE. So this is, uh, I just love it. Um, am I allowed to just gush about my own project here? Uh,
I mean, that's why you're here.
yeah, there's so
this is
more has
this is
come
the
to
ego
light.
stroking show. This is
So more has come to light since I first created this. If you read the about page, you'll know that part of the deal with me creating this was because I would love to build more electronics, and there's stuff that I love making stuff, and also it would be cool someday to maybe support myself partly that way. But also, I don't want to do it if it's gonna twist the world up even more and make me feel bad about myself. And so I'm looking for I went looking for just a set of guidelines on how to do electronics more better, and uh, not finding a very centralized guide. I was like, well, I'll just grab all the resources that I can and stick them in one place and then share that with other people so that if other people are looking for the same stuff, then they can find it. So that's how it was born. And since then, I've fortunately found a number of other cool things, including this VentureWell guide to tools for design and sustainability, which is designed for people, I think, partly for students. Let me get a better aspect ratio here. Um, but also and teachers, but in general for engineers and designers. And they go through everything from like whole system mapping, measuring sustainability, greener materials, lightweighting, which I believe is like how to use less when you're manufacturing things. But look how exhaustive this is. It's incredible. And I haven't had the chance to go through this yet, but I really want to. And circular economy, energy effectiveness, changing lifestyles, biomimicry, which is one of my favorite subjects, biomimicry and biocollaboration. Oh man, we can get into that a little bit. It's definitely included on Green EE. But yeah, so I've since found resources like that that sort of match what I was trying to do with this in the first place. But I still think that there's a good reason to have another repository that links to that as well as to a bunch of other options. And the way that I've set this up is that first off, there's some questions. So, what impact can we as individuals have? And apparently, this is still linking back to the GitHub wiki where it originated. But,
Mm.
the climate situation, let's pull this up on the actual one because it's linked in the header here.
Mhm.
Not that one. Power. Power is a very ambiguous header here, I guess. But yeah, so it sort of shifts this idea from it being our fault. It'd be very easy to sort of get into this sort of shame spiral. And I talked actually about this with Crystal yesterday as well. Um, how a lot of us can get kind of paralyzed by this idea that there's this huge thing to fix and that we're part of the problem and that there's nothing that we individually do. But if you shift it away from sort of a blame and shame and fault finding kind of thing, which honestly any one of us compared to like uh, one of my favorite things to point out here is that BP is the one who created the idea of the carbon footprint, basically to shift their responsibility for carbon emissions onto
Hmm.
the every person. It's
Much like the history of jaywalking laws here in the U.S., so those were created by car companies so they could shift the blame from their products killing people
absolutely. I
to the people
love
that
the
were operating
history
them
of
and
that
walking around
term.
them.
Do you know that jaywalking, the way that the place that comes from is that a jay was like a term for a country person, like a bumpkin who didn't know
A
what it was
hick.
like in the city, and so they painted them as
Oh,
this like, yeah, as this like basically oh, it's jaywalking. They don't know how the city
Yeah.
works. They're just like walking wherever when like
These rumble bumble country rubes come
yeah,
into the city
it
and
was a
yeah.
really good trick they pulled. So
Yep.
I love that
Thanks a
example.
lot,
Yeah.
Dodge Brothers
Mm.
or
Mm-hmm.
whatever.
And
I
so,
know.
in much a similar vein, BP has done this to sort of foist the responsibility onto us and make us feel
Mhm.
like, oh, it's because I didn't use my tote bag when I went to the grocery store. No, it's
That's right.
because of them. But even though it's largely their fault, we still have power to change it. And part of that is through our individual actions, and part of that is through, we have the power to talk to our representatives, to really get on their backs and be like, hey, our power is this sort of collective power where we can uh, get our legislators to get them to take
Hmm.
responsibility, put the responsibility back on the companies,
Mhm.
enact legislation, regulations. In Germany, there's requirements that you have to sort of take care of the product life cycle and offer recycling for hardware products that are returned to your company, which I think is amazing. I've learned that talking to the guys from MNT Reform, an open source laptop that
Mhm.
is very modular and repairable. Super cool.
Yeah, very
Lucas
cool.
Hartmann, that was another of the cafes that we did. So, we start out with a few of these questions, and then another question about like, why are you building a new thing? Is there, if it's in order to solve a need, is there an existing project that does what you want? Could you contribute to that? Would it be as just as fulfilling for you? And would you be able to take it further that way by collaborating? Is there a low tech solution? I love rumble strips, and I also love this example of um, somewhere down here of putting black paint on one blade of a wind turbine helps protect birds. They can see the wind turbines and they avoid them. And it's
Wow.
such a low tech solution. You could put
Hmm.
sensors on it, and you could require it to be powered, and you could have it like do some kind of alarm thing, or like stop the turbine or something. But you can also just paint one wing of it black. Rumble strips.
What's the deal with painting one black? Is it because they see the gradient?
I think
What's
it's so
the
they can see
reason?
it better. Yeah. I'm not
But
sure
just
why you
one,
wouldn't do all three of them. I don't know. I should look into that
right?
because I'm also
Well, it seems
curious.
like you wouldn't necessarily have to because it's not as though they move super fast. I think it's just more of a if they can see one aspect of it, they'll be like, oh, there's a thing there. Cool. I'll
Yeah,
go
maybe
some
it's
other
Also,
way.
I'm guessing that it is because one of them is at least one of them is white and the other is black. So you
Mm.
get both colors,
Mm.
and you see this difference, right? They see
right. So it looks like
something
something is
moving in both.
moving. Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah, it's like maybe if you just have white, then it blends with the background, and black is the opposite, right? So if you have black and white, both of them, maybe one of them will show up as if it's moving, right?
That
I don't know. I'm just
is
guessing.
Absolutely. I
interesting.
I bet you're completely right on that. And rumble strips are kind of the same. I think they're a beautiful, elegant solution to the idea of like, people falling asleep at the wheel or like getting distracted by stuff. You
Hmm.
could put some sensors in the car. There are things that, you can attach to your face where it'll like detect if you're falling asleep and like give you an alarm or something. You could have like a little thing that shocks you. You could have, but rather than having something special installed in everyone's car or on everyone's face or like all this extra technology, you just literally put a physical attribute into the road, just something that doesn't even take any extra material, and fixes the problem. Largely, you still need other guardrails and stuff, but so that's another of the questions. Or is there something you can repurpose? I love this line from iFixit: "The greenest phone is the one that's already in your pocket." They really hammer that home, and I love that line.
It's,
Um,
yeah,
yeah.
makes sense.
What does that mean?
Well, basically, you could build a greener phone. You could buy a greener
Yeah.
phone. Like if you go out tomorrow and buy a greener phone because you're like, oh man, this phone I have is crap. It takes so much materials and stuff. Well, now you've just bought another thing and used more
Oh,
materials.
I see.
Right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's the same criticism people had about Obama's what was it called? Something for clunkers, the
Cash for
car
clunkers. Cash for clunkers.
cash for clunkers program.
Hmm.
That okay, now you are replacing that car with a newer car. Maybe it is more efficient, but actually that car you just got rid of is going to create. I mean, that's material, right? You
Hmm.
actually
Yeah.
got rid of
Hmm.
something to and bought a new thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
So yeah.
Hmm.
there's still this criticism levied against electric vehicles that they do require these batteries that are very expensive materially and to produce and carbon wise to produce. Uh, with requiring mining lithium, for example. And so we're looking at building better batteries and things like that, and that's a really interesting space.
Yeah,
There's
and
been
it's not
some
like
really
those lithium mining companies. Surprisingly, not the most ethical organizations.
surprisingly
You'd
not.
really think of all after all these years, those good, kindly mining organizations that we have a history of in the United States. Yeah, no, it's that way everywhere apparently. Just ask
Yeah.
someone from, say, Appalachia.
Yeah, and Cobalt as well. So one of the cool things about that MNT Reform laptop I mentioned before is that they use these 18650 size battery cells, but they're lithium iron phosphate instead of cobalt, which, it's still lithium, but at least it's taking the cobalt out of the mix, which is also a conflict mineral. So,
Mm,
um,
mm,
yeah.
Have you ever wondered that we have these very heavy subsidies for electric cars, right? Electric cars
mhm,
don't need any subsidies. They cannot produce as fast as the demand is there right
Hmm.
now in the United
mhm.
States, right? If you want to buy an electric car, I want to buy an electric car, and I have to wait for 6 months to
Waitlisted,
buy
yeah.
one,
Oh, I didn't know
right?
that.
Hmm.
Uh, yeah, I mean, you can't from Tesla. If you want to buy a Tesla, I think the delivery is at least 3 4 months away, right?
Is that related to the chip
And
shortage or?
Mm,
it's related to the demand. I mean, in my neighborhood, I think Tesla is the most used car,
Hmm.
at least second car, right? I was actually shocked how many people in Southern California use Tesla. But
yeah.
another piece, here is that they don't have any subsidies for bicycles. Why not, right? The
Hmm.
people who are riding bicycle, they are actually helping. And you can go one step
Yeah.
further and say that electric bikes should also have, because
Oh,
with
absolutely.
bicycles, there is a limitation, right? You can get tired and you will not go very far places. But with an electric bike, you can go, you can do your groceries, you can do a lot of things with an electric bike, and there are no subsidies for electric bikes,
Hmm.
right? So a very
Yeah.
simple thing like that could encourage people to buy electric bikes. And
Yes.
Well,
it's more
yeah,
than the
and
subsidy, more than the actual subsidy. It's the fact that people start talking about electric bikes. It will bring, when you're trying to think, okay, maybe I should get an electric bike. At least people who have disposable income, they may have an electric bike for doing chores. Not like groceries, for example, is a classic case.
yeah,
So,
that
Yeah.
consciousness raising is really important because I mean,
yeah.
a lot of people may not even know how good electric bikes have gotten
Mm.
in the years, and a big part of that too is just culturally in the U.S. Like here in San Francisco, the example city everybody uses for like the kind of wet hippy dippy liberal elites. Every time, like there's like two streets in this city that have protected bike lanes. Like every single time there's some kind of proposal for it, it's like, no, it costs too much. And they're like, I guess people constantly being run over by cars is cheap. I don't
Yeah,
know.
and also, the Valencia Street bike lane is essentially a
Mm,
parking lot.
yeah.
That's the way people treat it. Like,
Yep.
it's always full of cars. It does bring us back to this, World Car Free Day. Hooray! And,
Yeah.
Germany
I have,
has subsidies for bikes.
Yeah.
One
mm,
of our
According
listeners.
to Jochin in the chat here. Thanks for that.
yeah, and I personally use e-bikes. I
Mm,
have a regular bike, but I use e-bikes. I use the Lyft ones, the rentable ones,
yep.
to go to, for example, the dentist when I don't want to show up really sweaty and gross for my dentist appointment,
Right.
and I don't want to, and I want to take a bike. It's like, okay, I'll take an e-bike, and it won't
Hmm.
like tax me physically, and I'll get to like show up, and the dentist won't have to deal with sweaty Alex. It'll be great. So.
It's also the lifestyle. Like I grew up in India,
Mhm.
Hmm.
and uh, my family did not have a car, right? My family did not even have a motorbike, which is very common. At least at that time, it used to be very common. Everybody in the family, they would have a motorbike, but the system is such in such a way that even if you did not have that, you can have, there is public transportation. Then most of the things I did was on my bicycle,
Mhm.
and the system is set up in such a way that you can live without without an automobile. Now I
Right.
think things are slightly different, but growing up, I could do everything. I never felt that I needed a car, or we were missing out on something because nobody around had those things as well.
Oh yeah.
But the carbon footprint that we talk about here, people talk about, oh, are you taking your grocery bags, etc. It makes me laugh because it's a very different, middle class people in India would use 100 times less carbon than
Mm.
people in the United States. And they don't even have to try because the system is set up in such a way that you're not missing out on anything.
Yeah, I should. This reminds me. I met this amazing person as in Shenzhen a few years ago, and there's this guy Push Bajaj who had an electric unicycle, and he apparently worked at this place, lived and worked at this place. That it was sort of a manufacturing, sort of independent manufacturing, almost like a compound for these electric unicycles, and he would take that thing 20 kilometers across the city to come meet us somewhere, and he had no problems with it. And I just thought it was, you just don't really see that as much, although those are pretty they're pretty popular here, and I love seeing people go around on them because they make me think of cyborgs. They totally look like cyborg creatures. But I'm noticing that we're at like 9:30, so I should probably try and just like zip through this really quick. um
Sorry, keep going.
Oh
We got
no, no,
time.
Many
it's
Yeah, keep
interruptions.
fascinating. I love it.
keep
I've
rolling.
seen all
Yeah.
this stuff 1,000 times, and people can totally go back and look at it later. I'm loving this conversation. But just to really quick go down the line, we've got sections for building and shipping hardware, the design, the physical design, how you power it, and I get into that a little bit with Crystal as well. Very much, powering individual devices and reforming that versus like trying to reform the entire grid. And I think that what she's doing is amazing there. Repairability, extending your project's lifespan, what I call after party, which is this thing of um, creating new add-ons for retro tech so that you can sort of bring it back to life and keep things alive.
Hmm.
And you can do the same thing with software, like the Rebel movement for replacing the OS on Pebble smartwatches
Pebble.
when they were retired. And what's really cool is
Yeah,
apparently I talked to David Groom, who's one of the originators of that project, and apparently Pebble really worked with them on that process, like keeping from shutting down the servers for long enough that they could really back it up and get a replacement system working, which I love.
that's
Um,
cool. That's
then
very
there's
cool.
like open design and manufacturing options, software, KiCad, love it. Um,
Mm.
Open tools for PNP and like vacuum pixel
Yeah,
pump,
I saw Joey Castillo's sensor watch on
love
there.
it.
I don't know if folks on the show can we pull that up on the screen here. I don't know if people are aware of that project. It's one of my faves. The Probably the most ubiquitous digital watch in
Got one in
history,
here.
the Casio F91. Yeah, I've got one over just far enough away I can't reach it, but yeah.
Sensor watch.
So yes, this is a whole modern like guts re-implementation that fits inside the case and existing hardware of the sensor watch.
It's
Isn't
so
that awesome?
good.
Yeah.
And you can add your own little flex cable connected
Hmm.
sensor on this attachment that he has. He has a connector in there that you can add any kind of tiny little sensor that you can fit on a little flex cable. You can put it in there. I love it, which is
Yeah, it's
why partly
tremendous.
why it's called the sensor watch.
I believe, doesn't Joey was also the one working on the ebook reader, right?
Yes,
Which is another project I've followed for a while and I'm super interested in.
from Oddly
Yeah,
Specific Objects, which is his
yeah,
wonderful company name.
great title. Yeah,
Are there?
absolutely.
Oh, it just
Is there a
struck
list
me.
of?
His logo is a bear, and Oddly Specific Objects is oso, which is bear in Spanish. I bet that. Oh, that just hit me.
Ah,
That's so great.
we'll clip this for promotional uses later and tag Joey in it.
I cut you
The
off there, I
shock
think.
of revelation was thankfully captured on camera. I love it.
Yeah,
So,
is there a list of computer vision related hardware that we know for sure that has been produced with you know lesser environmental
that
damage,
would
so
be
to speak? Are there
cool.
certifications or things like that that people get for such things?
There are definitely certifications, so that's a little bit further down here. Just really quickly on the way there, project inspiration is a huge part of this, one of my favorite parts, and I talked about collaborating with other bio collaboration, and that there's this huge
Hmm.
section on like working with clams and fungus and stuff like that, and microbes, which I love. Okay, so hardware platforms, certifications and guidelines. You can get RoHS certification. There's open source hardware certification just for like open source hardware, obviously. TCO certification, which is more of an environmental and social responsibility one, but it's all the way through the supply chain and throughout the product life cycle, which is super cool. There's
Mm.
you can be a registered B corporation, which is just like you're sort of saying that in your business structure you're going to say that you care about, one of your priorities is to support better practices and to employ them in your corporation. And then iFixit
Mhm.
also has some really cool electronics repairability scores for laptops and phones and such like.
That's really good.
And we hit
Yeah,
the bottom of the page. That's
it's
great.
really
I could
interesting.
show you some physical things really quick, or we could open it up for discussion. Oh, submit your links.
Let's
There's a link at the top.
yeah,
Submit cool links
let's
here.
show us some more stuff. We got time.
Ooh yeah, cool. Okay, so here's Fenrir. Fenrir is one of my
Yeah, can we
companion
can we
bots.
get a tight shot on the guest cam operator?
Let me see if I can
Not
put
sure
him on. He's been falling
which one
off
does
lately
that.
because I tend to
Yeah,
wear him with a bag that sort of holds it in place.
right. So this is one of your cobots. Your yeah.
Companion
Tell the
bot.
crowd a little bit about this.
Yeah, so I love the first one is up there, Archimedes the owl. But Archimedes is actually the name of Merlin's familiar owl.
Ah,
From
well,
the Sword in the
I was
Stone
wrong.
earlier, the Once and Future King, which
Hmm.
is something that my dad read to me when I was a kiddo. And later on at the hackerspace in Ann Arbor, all hands active, someone gave me the name Merlin. And so after I built this thing, I realized that I had built a thing that I'd been dreaming of for years. And I built it by
Hmm.
accident, which was like a familiar robot, basically. And then I realized that my nickname was Merlin and I had built an owl, just like by happenstance. And so, of course, I had to come Archimedes. Of course, in the Once and Future King, T.H. White says that, like, or Merlin, the character says that, like, you may not call him Archie. Arthur is like, I shall call him Archie, and Merlin's like, you shall not. He would hate it, so, but I do call him Archie, so
I
well,
mean, you'd have to,
score one for
obviously.
me, I guess. But this
Yeah,
is
most
Fenrir.
most of my knowledge of that comes from the Mystery Science Theater episode Merlin's Shop of Mystical Wonders. So
I'll have to check
I'm
that
not
out. That
up
sounds
on
wonderful.
yeah. It's very bad. It's a very bad
Yes,
movie.
even better.
Hmm.
I mean, I guess that's how they got on the show, huh? Uh,
Exactly.
but yeah, so this guy sort of employs some of those practices. I prototyped him in cardboard. You can actually still see some of the goldfish crackers box on the back of his head here, and kind of sandwiched in other places.
Yeah.
Um, and I've tried to sort of use good materials for him throughout. Also, when I repair Archimedes, I've tended to use, like, I was experimenting with recycling plastic on my own for a while.
Mm.
HDPE specifically from like gallon milk jugs and things like that. Or quart ones will do it as well. But I was trying to
Yeah.
squirt it
There
through
were those
hot glue guns.
things that like chopped up, plastic to make 3D printer spaghetti. That kind
Yes.
of it seems like that kind of didn't really go anywhere.
Oh, it definitely has. So this is
Really?
actually UHIPS. It's from Closed Loop Plastics, and this is another one of the projects that I wanted to show you. It is on Hackster now as of last week.
Hmm.
The Jewel Candle, which is based on a Jewel Thief PCB that I made. The Jewel Thief is a circuit not invented by me, but oddly enough, invented in the same city where I was. Um, which is a fun coincidence, but it basically allows you to run stuff off of nearly dead batteries, double A's, triple
Right.
A's, CR2032s. And so I made a PCB of that, inspired by Big Clive and Zetka Parnik.
Could you repeat that? It allows you to run this thing from dead batteries or
Yeah,
nearly dead
basically.
batteries?
So,
Yeah,
for example, this is my first
don't you
breakout that I
wind
made for it.
like a toroid or something with those?
Yes, a ferrite
Yeah.
toroid.
Hmm.
Um,
It's a fun word to say, toroid.
isn't it?
Yeah.
Much more fun than donut. Well, donut is fun too, but yeah, that
Yeah.
basically stores electrical. It builds up electrical energy as magnetic field, coming from in sort of trickles from the battery, and then eventually that field breaks down and dumps it all back into the circuit as electrical energy, which then gets pumped through the LED. Along with a small trickle of voltage that you're getting from the battery, and together they're able to like light it up for a flash, and it looks like it's on constantly to our eyes but it's actually like PWMing, and
Very cool.
so basically this just breaks that out into a candle holder for an LED tea light, so that you don't have to go through a million CR2032s. You can run it off of dead batteries
Hmm.
instead and use those up. But part of the reason that I brought this up is because it's printed out of this recycled UHIPS material that comes from basically solo cups and stuff like that.
Mm.
They have a pink
Mm.
version as well. This is the Nebula Black from Closed Loop Plastics, and it's
Neat.
kind of a dark plum, which I love, like a matte dark plum.
Yeah, it
But
has a
yeah,
cool color when the light catches it there, which is kind
yeah,
of
right.
rare for 3D printer filament.
It's kind of sci-fi, I think. Plus, there's the
Definitely.
shape, and then there's this other PCB that I made that's the sort of Hackster 2022 PCB, which embodies another
Wow.
one of my ideals about building electronics, which is that like for both of these PCBs, even if they didn't work, they both work as kind of cool designs. So I make these
All
into
right.
earrings. I wear these as earrings all the time. Also, it's like a part of the functional design that it has this slot in here, but it also makes it easy to do that with. Same with this guy. It's sort of an aesthetic thing as well as a practical thing. You can use it as, for example, a bookmark, sort of possibly a chip clip. You could sandwich a little razor blade in there to open packages with.
Hmm.
Um, Complete disclaimer
I,
on any damages through that. But you could use it as a little book light, and you could also wear it as an earring or like a key fob or something like that.
That's cool.
So, uh, and I found out recently that Alpenglow, Carrie Sundra of Alpenglow, another person I interviewed recently, has had a similar idea. She created this
Hmm.
swatch minder, which is like a yarn tool, which is made from the circuit board waste from a different circuit board that she created as well. So I love stuff like this where you're using the
Cool.
offcuts. And
Yeah.
if like the even if it doesn't work as a circuit, you can still use the physical object and keep it out of the landfill, basically.
Very cool.
I think so. So yeah, there's
Very
a
nice.
I got projects up for all of these things. You can go check out my extremely. It's kind of hard to explain how the Jewel Thief works, and other people have done it better than me. So you can get a rundown on that in
Yeah,
this
I
tutorial.
tried. I actually had a project a couple of years ago where I was working with uh, supercapacitors that instead of batteries, just with the
Oh
idea that I
yeah.
could make one, I could get a capacitor just big enough that it would power a solar, a solar powered light could store enough energy that it would be able to
Yes.
use it for like most of the evening instead of needing a battery because the shelf life on those capacitors is like forever compared to the 1 year or so you'll get out of a battery at most before it explodes or something, especially if it's outside. Um, it was really fun. It was the first time I hand wound a little toroid,
I
ferrite
love
ferrite
that.
toroid. Yeah,
Yeah, Adafruit
that
sells
was really
some
fun.
tiny little solar cells. I do see some people using those with supercapacitors
Yes,
for stuff.
yeah. I had a couple like two little tiny ones like you'd find on the old Casio solar powered calculators.
Love it.
Yeah,
Um,
those are really fun.
I
I've
It
have
feels
this.
totally
it
wanted
feels
to do
like
one of those.
magic when you
Uh,
do that. I feel like it feels like magic doing that sort of
I
stuff. It
believe.
does feel kind of Merlin-y where you're
Yes.
sort of making the electricity bend to your whims.
You're speaking my language. And Mohit Boite has a really cool uh, little project, this tiny little satellite that's a
Hmm.
Pummer circuit from Beam Robotics, but with this beautiful bent brass rod format with some solar cells that are very similar to those
Wow.
little calculator ones and a little supercapacitor. And look at it!
Wow.
And the Pummer
It looks
idea is
like
that it's
a
like
it
a.
looks like a space station or a satellite. Like
Yeah!
that's so cool.
And the Pummer like does a little periodic flash just based on how much power it's getting
Wow.
in. Love it. That's
Gosh, yeah. I
most of
feel
what I
like my
had to show
hands shake
you.
way too much for that. I
Yeah,
don't know if I
uh,
don't think I could do it.
it's
Wow.
so beautiful. All his work is gorgeous. This is
Yeah.
the final tab I had pulled up. Just that Jiva Materials is doing a recyclable PCB substrate, and there's some more stuff in Green EE about like chitin based PCB substrates that have been proposed from cast off shrimp shells from food production. Just
Huh.
all kinds of cool stuff about
Wow.
closing that loop, making it a sort of self-feeding ecosystem where we don't have to produce as much waste or
So
create as many new materials.
I have this low tech story about the life cycle of a T-shirt in India. This was me growing up, but even now in middle class India, this is what the life cycle of a T-shirt goes through. You buy a new T-shirt, you wear it for a couple of years, or maybe even more, as what is called the outside T-shirt. Right, you wear it when you're going out, and then that T-shirt becomes your night. You wear it in the house or while sleeping, etc. Right. So that's the second use of it. It goes for 2 more years. Right. Once you have completely worn it down, you basically use it as a tabletop rag. Right. If you want to clean tabletops and things like that. And then that lasts for about 3 months or maybe 6 months. I don't know. And then it goes to mopping. It's used for mopping the floor, right? And then it's there is nothing left, pretty much.
Yeah.
So that's the life cycle of a T-shirt. And I think even now in middle class India, most of the T-shirts probably go through that life cycle. So it's very different. The lifestyle we have here, right? My old T-shirts, I just donate it, and maybe one person gets to wear it, and then it goes, right? But here, you can see that it goes through this pretty intense life cycle, and every bit of it is used. Yeah. And India also recycles. I mean, it's sad, but India recycles a lot. It's surprising, and the reason it can recycle is that there are very poor people there for whom just going through that recycling and selling the recycled bottles and things like that, it is financially okay for them, right? It is kind of sad, but because of that, there is a lot of recycling that happens in India because of that reason also. So it's strange, how these things, the kind of things we in the United States, the kinds of things that we are proud of, that makes only a fraction of what people do in the rest of the world as regular practice, right?
Yeah, and
Just
we
to
have
give some perspective.
absolutely, and there's people who do make their living that way in cities like San Francisco, but I think it's a lot harder to get a living wage that way. There are companies
No,
like
it's not good living. I mean, I'm
No,
not
yeah.
suggesting that people are getting good. These are really poor people below the poverty line. It's not a good living at all. But that's what it is. That's part of the reason India recycles so much of what it consumes. Right? It's
by necessity.
It's very sad. I mean, it's not good at all. But as a consequence of that, India does recycle a lot.
Makes sense.
Yeah, and there are fortunately, there's some groups that are currently moving to do similar things here. There's a couple of different services I've pulled up here really quick that are places that you can order these bags from and fill them with your cast-off textiles, and they will sort them and figure out whether they can be reused or the fabric can be turned into, for example, insulation for houses or things like that. They'll figure out where it can go and get reused or best used in the waste stream or diverted to something less harmful. And you can get subscriptions for this and stuff. This is Retold Recycling, and 4 Days, who also make clothing out of recycled textiles, which I'm excited to see that there's more going on in this space now, but there's definitely room for more.
Yeah, apparently something similar is there for road material also, that plastics and other things which they are using for roads.
Yes, I love that. So yeah, I wonder, is it cat time yet? I don't know how this works.
Yeah, operator, can we please get the cat cam? I think it's one of the 99s. Yeah, there's our buddy. So, folks out there watching, if you've been with us for a couple of weeks, you may recognize our feline companion here in the studio, who tragically does not have a name. You can help solve that horrible problem by sending your suggestions to newsletter@opencv.org, or by posting here in the chat, of course. We will read out the best suggestions for cat names on next week's episode. No promises on when it gets named. I think with this sort of thing, you know it when you hear it, and we just haven't quite heard it yet. So please send those suggestions to newsletter@opencv.org, and we'll read the best ones next week. I think let's do our giveaway here, since we're hitting up about 9:50. So excuse me. If you need a reminder, this is your first time joining us, either way, there's something we do every week here, which is a giveaway to you in the audience. You're going to have the opportunity to answer a trivia question that I've made up based on what we talked about today here in the Zoom chat. If you're not in Zoom, you can hop into Zoom by going to opencv.live. If you have won within the last 2 months, please don't answer and give somebody else a chance to win. Get ready to answer in the Zoom chat. Everyone within the sound of my voice. Earlier, we talked about how this is an important time for sustainability, and it's Car-Free Day. Earlier, we talked about another very important and one of the oldest environmental holidays here in the United States, Earth Day. On what day does Earth Day occur, and when was the first Earth Day held officially in the United States? Answer in the Zoom chat, and you will win the OpenCV course of your choosing.
Ooh, I don't know the second part of that. I only know the first one.
Damn, Gianpaolo.
Wow.
Nice.
Like out of the box there. Congrats, Gianpaolo. Please send one. The answer was April 22nd, 1970. Congratulations, Gianpaolo. Please send one email to phil@opencv.org with the course you would like, and we'll make sure that you get assigned access to that in the OpenCV courses dashboard. So we've got a few questions here today. First off, I want to say thanks to everybody for submitting your OpenCV Spatial AI, OpenCV AI competition, Spatial AI track proposals on Monday, which was the deadline. We got quite a few of those, and we're currently going through them, and we'll be contacting the 25 chosen teams very soon so we can get them their OAK-D pros so they can start working on improving that depth estimation functionality. So thanks a lot for that. You've still got until sometime in October to submit your proposals for the OpenCV core side of that OpenCV AI competition 2022, which you can follow on all your social media channels with the hashtag OAK22, OAK22. So please follow along there. And if you're part of the contest, post your progress updates using the tag so people can see it. We've had a lot of success in the past. Last week we had Bart, who is revolutionizing sports with VR, which is not something I thought was even possible, but extremely compelling stuff. And it started with an OpenCV competition. So that could be you. Please don't underestimate yourself. Get those things submitted by sending one email to competition@opencv.org with info about your team and what you'll be doing. So Tia, is there any more news we want to do before we do questions?
Not really. I mean, that was
I think
the main...
there's a giveaway with Learn OpenCV still ongoing, isn't there?
So with Learn OpenCV, basically we are giving away, today is the last day, I think, today is the last day. Basically, NVIDIA GTC is going on, and if you register through our website, learnopencv.com, there is a giveaway, GTC, this 3080 Ti, we are giving away to one lucky winner. So you have to go register and also actually attend one of the sessions. So please keep a screenshot of the registration as well as the session you attend. And that's, I think you probably have just a few hours to register now because it's going to end soon.
Yeah, hurry up and register for that so you can get that card just before it becomes obsolete when the 4090s drop.
Well, it's still a very
NVIDIA.
powerful, it's a very powerful thing. And the other thing is that you also have 5 DLI credits, Deep Learning Institute credits, and each of these credits are worth $90 or so. So you have, 6 prizes in all. So please join and register. Yeah,
Yeah.
and it's
What have you got
I've
to
been
lose?
following GTC. I have attended many sessions. This is mind blowing stuff for computer vision folks. This is they have they actually are doing so many different. Uh, they're pushing on so many different fronts. It's amazing. You know, they have this Omniverse. They have NVIDIA Tau. They have something for robotics, the Isaacson. So there's
Yeah.
a lot to learn.
Yeah.
So even if you go and see the recordings, it's really good. So check that out.
Definitely. There's also this next week is the big Intel Innovation event.
Oh yeah.
There's also as part of that, if you're in the Bay Area in San Jose, California, in fact, there is the developer meetup, which is being kind of try hosted by Intel, Hackster, and OpenCV. That's us. September
Mm-hmm.
27th, 5 to 7 p.m. You can
It's
register
Tuesday.
for that by going to this coming Tuesday. That's right. You can register for that by going to hackster.io/events. You'll see it at the on the page there. I will probably be there. There may be OpenCV stickers. I'm not going to promise anything. But if you see me there, please tell me your best name for the cat. There's also upcoming as Alex already talked about, the Impact Summit by Hackster. That's October 11th and
Yeah.
12th. So you can register for that, which is a virtual event, by going to hackster.io/events as well. Let's get to a couple questions before we run out of time here. So we've gotten this one a couple times already. I think Satya probably has a lot of thoughts on this, and I'm sure Alex does as well. One of the big things in terms of sheer carbon footprint in computer vision is artificial intelligence and deep learning. It takes a massive amount of power to just train a model using those huge, GeForce and Tesla and whatnot GPUs.
Yeah.
Yeah, Satya, what are your thoughts on the state of things today? Like, what do you think the next improvements come from for both computer vision and artificial intelligence in terms of using less power and being more sustainable?
Right. So the very first thing I want to mention is about scale, right?
Mm-hmm.
These are power hungry, and each version of this new hardware, it gets more power efficient.
Mm-hmm.
30-40 power efficiency from one version to another is not unheard of, right? It happens, and because there is such a push for doing everything on the edge, there's incentive for these companies to make it very power efficient. But we also have to keep things in perspective. For example, I think there was a tweet by Jan Lucken who did this calculation. I think it was for GPT, one of the large language models. I cannot remember which exactly it was. He did the calculation how much energy was. Maybe Jan Lucken did not do the calculation. Maybe he was just retweeting. But the energy that was spent um, in creating that model, right? All versions of that model was the same as one trip, uh, intercontinental trip from Europe to US.
Hmm.
That's it on a Boeing 737 or something like that, right?
Hmm.
There are 1,700 such flights every day, right?
Mm-hmm.
And we are talking about this one foundational model. It took the same as one trip, right?
Hmm.
So in the global context, we can even if we reduce we should be reducing the energy consumption, but that's not where the main uh, thing is, right? We are trying to optimize, you know, uh, sub 1%, right? It is like 1% of 1%, even if you consider all the deep learning activity going on in the world, right?
Hmm.
And so I mean, the bigger wins are elsewhere, right? I mean, we should still try to make things as efficient as possible, but we should not be under this impression that, oh, if we if we cut deep learning training power by half, it's going to have any significant impact because, all the power consumption is happening or energy consumption is happening
Yeah.
elsewhere.
And it's still a relatively small. We talk about this all the time on the show. It's still a relatively
Yeah,
small or like business. It's a relatively small industry.
yeah,
Mostly, if you are spend any significant amount of time with AI, you pretty much know everybody that does it, and
yeah,
it's obviously growing by leaps and bounds, and there's tons and tons of capital going into it. But at the same time,
Yeah.
it's not at a scale. It's a fair point that it's not at a scale that it's not like, say, a shipping container worth of carbon emissions every day or whatnot. But
right,
Alex, do
right.
you have thoughts on this?
Yeah, well, that's true. I think it's definitely valid to be concerned about. It's something that is
Certainly.
skyrocketing that fast. Like its pace of growth could definitely render that
Yeah,
different within a couple of years.
Hmm.
That said, I do agree, and I think that a lot of that could be solved with the same stuff that we were talking about earlier, where if you solve the problem of where the energy is coming from, then you solve a lot of the problems around the carbon emissions, and you don't really have to worry about it anymore. It becomes a moot point if you're powering that off of some other source of energy other than burning fossil fuels. But then also, there's the perspective of, I'm not sure I'm going to say this right, but Timnit Gebru,
Hmm.
Gebru, who is the person who, among others, published some critiques of Google's approach to AI while she was working there
Yeah.
on their ethics team. And part of her critique there was that they were working with these massive data sets. And she was criticizing this on one level from a standpoint of observability where you can't really tell what's going into the model. It's impossible
yeah,
to sort of monitor it
Hmm.
and see like where its results are coming from. And that's also a current concern now. Like that was a couple of years ago. It's still an ongoing concern where
yeah.
for example, recently there's articles coming out about how a lot of these art AI generating algorithms are fed by data sets that include porn and violence and
Wow.
atrocities, and like
Yeah.
that
Yeah,
stuff is not well managed and it's sort of hidden in there. And people are sort of starting to pick up on that and really report on it. And so,
And
there I think could be an
stuff that's
advantage.
already itself AI generated. Apparently, there are deep fakes in the data sets for these like AI systems, which is
Yeah.
bizarre.
And besides the fact of, it may be ripping off artists without the even the possibility of
that's
crediting them because you know where that
Which is a
stuff comes
huge
from.
problem.
Like,
right.
working with smaller data sets where you actually know what's in it, on the one hand, like it solves part of this problem where you're just working with these vast amounts of data that chew through a lot of computing power. And by reducing the size of those data sets, you would solve several problems. One of them is the carbon problem, but also the observability problem, the problem
Mm-hmm.
of like where it's sourcing stuff, and the problem of like what stuff is getting put into the data set that's going to come out in like unpleasant ways. Yeah,
Yeah,
so I think,
that's a very big concern actually, especially with these very large data sets. There is no way to, I mean, uh, people are going for the science, but they are not putting enough effort in making sure that these data sets do not have these. And I don't even know whether it's physically possible to,
mhm.
uh, how do you make sure that all this is high quality and all the bad things don't get in. So that's a concern. And the other thing that you mentioned, I also completely agree with. It's like if you steal from one person, it is called plagiarism. If you steal from a million people,
It's
then that
called
is,
GitHub Copilot.
Yes, yeah, same. I was just thinking of that. Yeah,
right. So, uh,
the machine.
and it is ripping. I mean, I'm very conflicted about this whole thing because it is true that uh, we are using the work of artists to put them out of business in some
Mm.
sense, right?
Yeah, there's no way
Well,
to
and
opt out of it.
also specifically
Yeah,
enrich already very wealthy mega corporations.
Yeah.
right.
Um,
Well, so and then, but there is also this fact that this also adds it allows other people to come and do things, right? For example, the people who are creating art using Midjourney or
Mm.
DALI 2, etc. They are using a different art form, so it's extending art in some sense, right? It is not just
mhm.
interpolating, but it's creating new art.
I do think it's
So
very interesting.
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's fascinating. I mean, it's science fiction to me.
Yeah,
Now it's
Yeah,
science
and
fact, baby.
yeah.
and
Full disclosure, we have a little thing going on in that which I cannot talk about. But that's why I'm conflicted, right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Because
absolutely. And
Yeah.
there's oh, has it just gone out of my head? Let's see. Had to do with AI and art. Oh yes. It all always also ties into this concept where I heard this amazing phrase a few years ago where it's like machine learning is money laundering for bias. And like it's the
Mm.
same thing where people assume that like it's a machine, it's not like it sort of generates things out of whole cloth.
Yeah.
It's just a machine. It can't be causing harm because it doesn't have any intentions. But all of this stuff is programmed by
no, it
humans.
has.
Yeah.
It's all
Yeah,
bias.
Exactly.
Yeah.
and so whatever
Exactly.
humans put into it, like if it's trained on human art, that's going to come out. If it's trained
Hmm.
on humans, talking on the internet, that's how you get Microsoft's Taybot, which like ends up spewing horrible, uh, you know,
If you train a robot on
Right.
racism and various other flavors of bigotry, you get a racist robot.
which is why you've got
Yeah.
to monitor your data sets and like make sure that what
Hmm.
you're putting in there is stuff that you're willing to get out of there. Even on ones that aren't that are a little bit more monitored, like GPT-3, you end up with situations where like they have to literally go in behind the scenes and shunt
Hmm.
in randomly words for like female or like person of color or whatever to make sure that when you type doctor in, it's not always a white man and nurse isn't
Right.
always like a white woman or whatever, and
Right.
that like these different biases that we have culturally don't come
Hmm.
out from the machine, and people think that it's objective and just truth because it comes from the machine. It's subjective.
Yeah. Exactly like it's very similar to what we're talking about jaywalking and carbon credits.
Yeah.
That in a big way, and a huge danger here, and something that I think people really need to be vigilant about is when you're Meta slash Facebook and Google slash Alphabet, et cetera, et cetera. This is a really in a big way. This is already being used for them to sidestep their actual responsibilities on their platforms
Yes, yes, yes,
because
yes.
they say, "Oh well, the robot said,"
Yeah,
So if you can't specifically blame a person, then I guess it's fine.
and it's having direct real world implications as well.
Absolutely.
There's people
Yeah.
who are working on oh,
Hmm.
did we get cut off? Okay.
No, we're
Now we
we're
are
good.
here.
All right. Yeah, there's people who think that the biggest threat to people is AI, but in the form that
Hmm.
like someday it'll be super intelligent and take us all over. When there's real concrete harms being perpetuated by the use of AI right now, like
Absolutely.
deploying immature AI from companies like Amazon that want to sell it to police forces and stuff, which has led, due to the fact that it still has these biases and it is poorer at identifying people of certain phenotypes, the fact
Hmm.
that it's led to mistaken arrests of multiple men of color because it's bad at identifying them and telling
Yeah.
them apart. And this is having a real world effect right now. We don't need to worry so much about Skynet as just like, our existing
Topnet.
systems that are in place and them using these objective machine systems
Hmm.
to basically that are perpetuating those problems that already exist in our culture.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And soapbox
Yeah.
rant. I'm not the
No.
first
So,
person to.
I mean, but the good news is that the reach of AI beyond these, there are so many different problems where these biases, etc., they don't matter because you're
Yeah,
working in an industrial. There's no human involved, right?
Sure.
for
You're
sure.
working in
Yeah.
with industry, so that's the promise. We have to be very careful about
Yes.
these whenever it interacts with humans, AI interacts with humans, or it makes decisions for humans. That's where we have to be very, very careful about, because
Yeah.
all the progress that has been made, it is we are going to lose it if we are not careful with if we move too fast on some of
Hmm.
these things. And that's my concern right now, that most of the companies who are working on these things, because it is such an evolving field, there is a mad rush to get something out faster
Yeah.
than
Yeah.
actually doing the right thing.
There's always going to be casualties in a gold rush. California's
Yep.
had
Yeah.
a couple. Yeah. Yeah.
There's just one final little thing here where I
Hmm.
forget who said it, but it was something about how machines cannot take responsibilities. So, like,
Hmm.
if someone does get mistakenly arrested, whose fault is it? Who's going to take responsibility for that and make sure that it doesn't happen again? And that yeah, if we keep them like stay in their lane, there's things that for which this technology is so powerful and really just amazing. Like Peter Ma's Clean Water AI project always comes up with Hackster because he won a ton of contests with it, and it's just this amazingly powerful technology that can use AI to help you detect microbes in water that are harmful. And instead of shipping out new chemical tests, every so often when a new toxin is discovered, you can just update the model over the air and instantly have access to that new test and
Wow.
like all over the world. And I just think that kind of stuff has so much promise. We just have to know where to apply it and where not to.
Right. And I
well
think
said.
you put a little skin in the game for some of these companies, and the problem fixes itself. For example, autonomous driving, right? Tesla calls calls it autopilot, which I completely hate.
Yeah.
It gives an impression that the technology is very sophisticated and it is an autopilot, but it is not. But if you put a little skin in the game, for example, if there is a law that says that,
Yeah.
and it could be, let's say, $1 million if a life is lost, right, and it goes to the victim's family or whatever, right? It doesn't solve the problem, but it quickly gets the companies who are producing technology not being careful, without being careful about it, they will quickly go out of business, right?
Yes.
Let's say there are
And they should.
let's say there are
Unfortunately,
1,000.
that's not how it
Yeah,
works
car
yet.
company, there are 1,000 per year casualties, and you just lost $1 billion, right? And for a lot of companies, that's the end of all profitability, right?
Scaling that to the revenue of the company, I think, as well would be a good addition to that, where like, there's that cliche where, if a crime is punishable just by a fine, then that's just the price you have to pay to commit it as a rich person.
Fine is just a price.
No,
yeah,
it should be an existential crisis, right? You have to put the fine at such a level that the company goes out of business, right?
Absolutely.
And that actually doesn't, it's very evolutionary, this kind of penalty, because people don't change, right? It's not like the executives in those companies will become very careful after
suddenly
a
become
few fines.
virtuous exemplars
They will
of
not.
humanity.
They will not. But
yeah.
no, then it doesn't happen, right? Even with humans don't change. But it works as evolution works. These companies will go out of business, and therefore the system will improve, right? Not because they will learn their lesson. It is that these bad companies will go out of business, right? And that's how evolution also works, right? It's not that, people start learning what's good for them and start correcting their behavior. People don't, and companies don't. They just go out of business, right? So the system improves by not having them in the system, right? Same thing with bad drivers. It's not like they suddenly realize their mistakes. No, they just they remove themselves from the gene pool, and the system improves.
Hopefully
sadly, that's the case.
Or they get enough points on their license, and hopefully they get taken off anyway.
Yeah, fingers crossed anyway. We went a little bit over. This has been a really fun chat. Thanks so much for joining us, Alex.
We really got into it. I love this.
Where can people find you on the internet if they want to follow you and see what you're doing?
Let me pull up the...
Yeah, can we get the screen up there?
You know what? Where am I? I might not actually be up on here yet. Let me pull myself up. So I'm on Twitter at Glowaski. It's taking a minute to load, but believe it or not, this is actually
yeah, there you go.
Well, you can ask the story behind that in person sometime. It's a little trivia fact, but and then you can also find me on Hackster at the same username, hackster.io/Glowaski. And also Instagram, same deal. I would love to chat with people about this stuff. Also, final call to action. Okay, 2 things. Sign up for the Impact Summit. You're going to love it. It's going to be awesome. We're going to be releasing who's on it soon. And go to green-ee.com, green-ee.com, and click the submit links here. Link there at the top if you have anything that you think should definitely be on this page. Thank you.
All right.
Awesome.
Thank you guys.
So much.
That's great.
Can we get a 2-shot operator? All right, Satya, you want to take us home?
Yeah, thank you, Alex. It was having this conversation was really great, and we wanted people to be aware of these things. We always talk about technical things, but it is equally important that we do things in a sustainable way. And thanks for coming to the show. And this resource that you have created, that's very useful. It is, we all need to think about it and also use it, contribute to it as much as possible, and make things make things better. So thank you so much.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. Well said, Satya. We'll be back
Thank
here.
you, folks, and thanks everyone.
We'll be back. Thank you, Alex. We'll be back here next week, same bat time, same bat channel, 9 a.m. Thursday, Pacific time. Our guest will be Eric Poehler, who is going to talk about using technology to 3D capture the ruins of Pompeii, among many other awesome things he's done in his career. I've known Eric off and on the internet for going back to my structure sensor days at Occipital, and I'm super excited. Hopefully he can enlighten us next week on the show. Take care of yourselves out there. Take care of somebody else if you can, and have a great day wherever you may be. Operator?
Thank you, guys.
Sweet outro music by the Monster Association. We did it.
All right.
Another one in the can. One of these times, I tell you, really just slouching toward Valhalla here.
And some rough beast its hour come around at last. Oh man, it would be great to make a robot based on the second coming.
Well, if that's not the right thing to end the show on, I don't know what is.
Have you
Thanks, folks.
Oh, can they still hear us?
Right now they can, but yeah.
Did you hear about the time that I think it was W.B. Yeats kicked Aleister Crowley down the stairs?
Yes, I did.
Great story.
The wickedest man in the world can't take a boot. Adios.
All right. Thank you, guys.
Thanks so much for watching this episode of the webinar. Please hit that like button, subscribe, and don't forget to tap the little bell icon to be notified when new episodes drop. This week's episode was brought to you by OpenCV Courses. Learn computer vision and AI from the best at opencv.org/courses. If you'd like to be in the audience next week, subscribe to the OpenCV newsletter.